BMW DIY guy here. The project today is from AvinUSA and is a 10.25-inch Android display going into an E83 X3. I am really excited about this project because this really brings a very cool level of technology to a car that doesn't have it. This will take your E83, which in this case is a 2006 X3, to a place that it looks like it's a brand new car. You're going to have a display in your car that makes modern and current car owners and the same models jealous. It is better than the OEM screens that are going into, I believe, into the OEM models right now. And to top it off, it's touchscreen, has Android functionality, and a lot of other things. The cool thing about this project, beyond the technology itself, is how easy this work can be done. You need a single screwdriver and about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of your time total, and you're going to take your car from that little storage component or a little storage box up in the center of your console to a technology that'll make the other owners jealous. What a great project to do. Let's get out to the garage and get started. Okay, so we're out in the car. This is a really simple install, and I'm really impressed with how quickly you can make a really significant difference in your car. So I'm going to do my best to show what you're going to do and not get my head in the way too much. So first of all, you want to grab the corner of your vents and just gently pry. Now you can use a plastic trim tool if your vents are really tight, but I find I can just pry with my fingers and this vent assembly will come out. So just gently pry or pull this out. You should see that you've got your vent control here on top. Walk the cable out, pull the little clip off, that's now free. And now you've got your hazards and lock button. Now what I find is it's really hard to get to this plug from behind. So if you gently push on the tab underneath, you can walk the button out. Now if this button is super stiff for you, and it might be, now this in my case, it's pretty loose, so it comes out really easily. It might be easier for you to try to get the plug out by itself. But for me, I walk the plug out, I walk the entire switch out and then walk the plug out. Then your vent is out. As you can see, super, super simple. Then what you're going to do is you've got two screws right here at the top of this trim, one here, and it's just a Phillips. So you're going to take these two screws out, just like this, and just like this. All really easy. And it's out. Now this trim piece, be careful not to break it, and I want to be really clear on that. It's just held in by pressure clips underneath. So you pull on this top part. If you pull too hard, you could potentially snap it off right here. Don't do that. I kind of walk my finger down on the inside until it pops on one side, pops on the other, and it comes out. And you can see it's held in. You don't need to take any of this off, and you can just let this just dangle here and hang, and you'll be fine. Make sure you've got enough cable room. That exposes the two screws for the head unit here and here. So we'll take these out. Now notice that these are a little bit different than the two screws that you're going to pull, that you pulled up above for the trim, and the two screws we're going to pull here as well. These are shorter, so just make sure when you put them back in the same place. These two are round head and a little bit shorter. So just like that. Then your head unit's out. So you pull your head unit by just pulling gently, and it comes out. Now on the back, you'll see the antenna, which I'm going to pull for now. So you just a little pressure clip, you press on it, it comes up and off. And this has got a little horseshoe or a horse collar type clip on it. So you're going to pry up at the bottom of this to get this collar up, and then the collar pulls up and away, pulls up, and then the plug comes out. So now our plug is out and our head unit's out. So go ahead and set your head unit aside or your stereo aside just for a few minutes. And then we'll get this last piece out. So if you have this storage box, there's two screws right here underneath. They're a little hard to see here on the video, no doubt, but they're just Phillips as well. Just two screws right here. You just reach up underneath, pull the first one, and like I said, you can tell they're a little bit longer screws. They're like the screws that were used for the trim piece. So you pull that. Hopefully not looking at the back of my head too much at this point. If you are, I apologize. You can pull this one as well. So once that's out, you can see that's out as well. This compartment just lifts up and away. So now it's out. So at this point, we're more than half done for this install. It's that simple. Now, a couple of things you're going to need to do first, and I'll walk through them. We're going to talk about how to get your wiring harness in here and the things that you need to do. These metal clips. Now, if you also notice, on the bottom of this, there are these little metal screw clips that are used. Now, you're going to want to take these off and put them on the bottom of your new screen display, because it has these plastic posts, but it doesn't have these little metal plates. So you're going to want to pull both of these off and transfer onto your screen. So don't forget to do that, or it's not going to screw in here because they'll have nothing to screw in to. Now, the one thing I want to point out really, really clearly is, as I was looking at this install, I've already done this work, so I can't demonstrate right now, but right here is a little plastic post that stands up. What I've done, this little plastic post is part and fits into this compartment to help hold it in place and be really, really solid right here. It needs to come off for this display, because the display is all flush right here, and this post will hold the display up, and it doesn't sit flush. So what I did was, you can take any sort of cutting tool, you could take a Dremel, you could take anything. What I did was I just simply took a hacksaw blade and just held it in my hand and just used this flat plastic piece here as my level, and just slowly cut that post off. So now the other thing that I find really interesting is, as when I cut that post off and I put this storage bin back in temporarily, it doesn't actually affect the storage bin at all. So with this post being here, it's still just in as just as securely and just as solidly. It's not an issue. But yeah, you're going to have to take this post right here off to get your new screen in. That's the only permanent change you're going to need to make as you do this install. And even then, if for whatever reason you were selling your car and you wanted to keep your display or whatever it happened to be, you could put this storage bin back in and it doesn't affect this at all. So now all of these pieces are out. I'm going to grab the wiring harness, so I want to show you what I've done with the wiring harness and what we're going to do to make this all work. So I've got the wiring harness. I want to show what we're looking at here. So I've got the BMW auxiliary plug. Now you can get this if you've already got it, like I do. So I've got the OEM plug that I overpaid for by a lot, and I've had it installed into this car that I actually had installed and put down into the ashtray. So before I've installed this display, I had this already installed and ready to go. So I've got maybe some slight differences in what you have in your car. But to get sound from the Android side of the display into your stereo, it has to come in through your aux port. Now, I've got the OEM plug that I overpaid for a few years ago. You can also get a perfectly good OEM the aux cable from Avin. So you're looking at the same thing. So your steps might be slightly different here, but you're looking at the same end result. So now, if you've got the OEM cable, which is here, this is the original wiring harness, you're going to want to pull it out. You pull it down the little tab and pull it out and have it be free. So as you can see, it's now free of the plug, because what we're going to do is we're going to be putting this into the end of the wiring harness for the Avin side itself. So when this goes in, we're gonna replace the B plug here on this side with the B plug for the aux. So there's this big monster B plug right here. It's the B side of the plug that you're going to pull out, as in hopefully you can see I just did. And this is the wiring harness from Avin. So, and I've pulled out this B side, and I'm going to put the accessory aux cable B side in its place. That way your aux cable will be able to provide sound from the display into your stereo. Your head unit will recognize that it has aux. There's the mode button where it's radio, CD, and you'll now have an aux that if you didn't have the auxiliary cable before, you'll have it now. So you need to make that transfer of that cable from your original side to the end of the new auxiliary cable and pull out this B side that's in the new wiring harness. Now, so when you look at the wiring harness, I made a very slight change for a little bit of cable length. So ignore the white electrical tape. That's purely me. It comes in this great fuzzy foam wrap, or fuzzy wrap that the wiring harnesses all come in. Ignore this. This is just purely me. But you can see here's your auxiliary cable that you're going to want to plug in here, your aux out that's coming out from your display. And this is on your original wiring harness. So let's actually look at the display itself. So now here's your display. What I've done already is I've connected my GPS antenna that actually I'm going to install right up here in this compartment underneath. There's plenty of space in this void underneath the display that you can put the display in and keep the antenna directly underneath it. So let me show that. Let me adjust my angles a little bit. Let me show you exactly what we're looking at. So I've adjusted the view a little bit because what we really want to look at this point is where the display is going to fit in. But before the display is going to fit up here, I'm going to put the GPS antenna underneath here in this void space because there's going to be some extra space, and I don't believe that I'll have a signal strength problem with it sitting up here on top. But before we get there, what we really need to do is good cable management and deal with this wiring harness, because again, you're going to be putting this wiring harness into a space that didn't originally design for, or wasn't originally designed for it. So you got to make it work. There's plenty of space to make it work. We've just got to fit it all in. So here's the original plug off the back of your head unit. Here is the female plug on the other end of the wiring harness from Avin. So let's go ahead and get this into place first. So we're going to put this in just like so. And then this little harness, or the little collar, comes down and snaps into place. So now that's all in place. Now, because of having to bring up the aux cable from the other side, I've got a little bit of a loop where my cabling is pretty tight, but that's okay. So we're going to deal with this in a moment. But the main thing we want to focus on is where these feeds all come up. So now we've got a couple of cables we need to deal with, because the USB cables and the primary display cable all have to come up through this space, up past your vents, and actually very conveniently there's a hole right here in this frame that can come up through. But you want to route those cables first. So now here's the USB cables that I've placed, and I've put these already in. These are the double USBs. Now where you put these cables is a good question, and all of these different cables, you can decide on whether you want them or not. You don't have to have them installed. So if you decide that you don't want these USB plugs, then you don't have to have them. The same thing goes for the RGB plug that goes into the back as well. I've decided to not install it, so I'm not going to show installing that RGB connection, but it works just fine, and you're going to do the same thing. You'd route it up through here, you'd plug it into the back of the display. All of the plugs go into one place in the back of the display, and that's where they go. So now for USB, the double USB plugs, same thing. You're going to want to route up through here, and I've decided on the left side of these vents. I feel the right side is already jammed pretty full of other cabling. So I'm going to put it up through this left side and fit it between the vent and the frame, and then up through this hole. So as you can see, it goes here, and then you route it up through this hole that's right back here. And it would be difficult to show. It's easy to find and easy to see, but a little difficult to show. Let me get the vent cable out of the way. So as you can see, it just comes right here, and you can let it sit there. You also want to take your display cables as well. Now you've also got the RGB, or the video connection, and the power and trigger for your backup camera that hang off really close here off the plug. So I'm going to have these extras sitting also up in this void space up here on top. Now I plan on having the backup camera in this car someday, and I'll show that, but for today I'm not going to show that. So this, again, route behind all of this framing, because this is where that wiring is going to go. So I'm making sure that's routing back behind all of this. Then I'm going to take the plug and I'm going to route it up through, and it fits. It's close, but it fits up right through there. Route it up through the hole, get the video plug up and through, and you just kind of gently wiggle, and then you can see all of those are up there is now as well. So all of your cables are here and good to go, and you have to deal with this cable management to get them tucked behind your vents, so when you put your vents back in, it doesn't foul in any of those cables. So we've got our wiring harness in, we've got your video display cables and USB cables. If you want to run that RGB cables, if you're doing some sort of video in, you can run those up here as well. I don't have a need for it, but I'm not going to run it, so I'm not going to show it. Okay, so next steps really are getting the display into place. Now, to get the display into place is really simple. We're going to pick it up, we'll plug all the cables into the back of the display, and then there's two tabs on the back of the display that will fit between the liner of your dash and this plastic frame. So you're going to fit it, slide it back in until they fit in, because that's what holds that back piece down, and then bring the display down. And you'll see where when you transfer those two little locking plates onto the bottom of the display, they line up with these holes here. So all really quite simple. Now the other thing I wanted to stress that I mentioned before, I've already attached, as you can see here, I've already attached my GPS cable, and I'm going to actually put my GPS antenna as well up into this void space, because I don't see any reason to run it anywhere else. There's room for it, and I shouldn't have any antenna problems through this thin plastic. I've never had a problem with it personally. So I've already attached my GPS antenna, and I'm just going to put that up here and up and out of the way for now. So as I turn the display around, you can see, and forgive road noise, you know, as usual, I'm working out here in my garage today, so I've got people driving by. So the cables only go in one place. You can see that my USB goes here, like that, and just snaps in, and you can hear a little click. The main display goes up on top, it snaps in, and there should be a little bit of a click as it goes in. So now that's all of my wiring harness and everything good to go. My GPS is on, my USB is on. If I was going to use the RGB in, it would go on the other side, and my main display is on. So you can see we've got these little tabs on the back. So now all you have to do is turn it around, and really there's kind of more of an art than a science to this. You probably get to look at the back of my head again a little bit as I do this. As you can see, you try to line up those tabs and just wiggle and fit, and it'll fit in under. Now, the plates go behind, so here's the frame with the holes. Your locking plates go behind that frame. Now, I've got a little bit of bow in this back plate that you can't see on the video, but all I'm gonna do is slide my hand back here and just work, and just, there it is, and bang. Slid right into place. So now it's flat and level. I can feel the sides all the way around that plate. It's all in, the display's in, and doesn't that look amazing? Now, on the video right now, as I look back at my video, it doesn't look straight and level in the video, but it honestly is in my dash. It's completely straight and level. So ignore the fact that it looks like there's a little bit of angle to it, because there actually isn't. There isn't an angle when you actually look at it here installed, but I can see an angle in my video. So don't get thrown off by that. So then at that point, what you're going to want to do is, it takes two of your longer screws. So we're going to grab two longer screws again. I'm going to look here underneath, and I'm going to secure this in place. So as I work with this, it's not going to move around on me. The one thing I just make sure that as you do this, make sure that your back plate for the display is straight and level. Those tabs kind of back underneath your trim piece are all in place and good to go. And then you can make sure that your locking plates are right in the right place as well. In my case, they're a little bit not quite straight. So there you go. So now that one's in. So that way I can work with this, and it's not going to move as I work with it. So that's in, and I'll screw it in and ready to go there. Make sure that your back plate is still nice and straight and level, which mine is. And then we'll put the screw in the other side. Now, all in all, this whole install, if you just follow this and do it, I honestly think you could do this in probably about 15 minutes. It takes a little bit longer to explain it, but between opening the box and getting this installed, it's probably 15 minutes if you really kind of click along at it. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second, then I want to show you the last few steps. But the one thing I want to emphasize is good cable management. So I've got my USB cables that are right here, and you're going to slide them between the vent and the frame. So I'm going to move my vent tube a little bit, slide those cables back, and then I'm going to move the vent tube a little bit and slide this cable back as well, so it fits in nice and well. Now, the one other thing before I pause, where to put these USB cables. Now, I've decided that I want them, so I still need to decide how I'm going to route them. Ideally, I might actually route them completely under the center console, maybe even as far as up underneath my armrest. I haven't decided on that yet, but I want to show the rest and show how the rest of this cable harness all fits in together once we get the head unit in and we get the aux cable connected. So I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so now we're at the stage that's a little more art than science. What we want to do, so this is the end of the auxiliary cable, the add-on auxiliary cable that's plugged into the wiring harness. I've tucked all the extra cable back behind. You want to take your male-to-male headphone jack, your plug it into the auxiliary cable, and plug it into the auxiliary audio out that's on the wiring harness provided by Avin. So now this is how your Android display will talk to your head unit. Your head unit will think that, again, it's the auxiliary input, and that's how you'll hear sound from your navigation and other stuff. So I've connected that. You could even take a little bit of electrical tape, wrap it around these connections to make sure this plug doesn't come out. I'm actually going to do that. The other thing that I've done is, like I said, I've connected the wiring harness. I've got the original plug into the female of the new wiring harness. We've got the male end of the new wiring harness here with the auxiliary cable plugged in, and I've started to tuck all of this back behind a little bit. And this is where having your AC controls and the like out is a good thing, because you're going to be able to slide your hand up into this space and pull some of this cabling down. There's void space back behind, because the whole head unit has to go straight in, and there's a post on the tail end of it that's going to go into into the frame in the back. So the whole head unit's going to go in, and you're going to have to get all this extra cabling pulled down and away so the head unit can go in. But I'm prepared to do it. So my aux cable is connected. I've got my original antenna cable here, because don't forget that. You're going to plug into the back of your head unit, and it's in a place where I can get to it really, really simply. So at this point, this is where you're going to take your head unit, reconnect it. So you're going to plug in the harness for the new male side. And again, it's got that same collar, sort of horseshoe or horse collar type of connection. So you just rock that up. You get it plugged into the back of your stereo, and it's going to fit in right there. And then you'll plug your antenna back in on this side right here. You'll plug your antenna in, and I'm off edge of the camera a little bit, sorry. So you'll plug your antenna back in right here, and then you're going to slide the entire unit into the dash, and you're going to reach underneath and slowly work all that cabling down. Like I said, it's a little bit more art than science, because you just you work at it, you work it in gently, you pull all that cable mass down, you work it in until it's nice and flat and level, and the securing screws are back lined up with your plates here, and your stereo is sitting straight. So that's going to take a little bit of just doing, so I'm going to spare you from watching me work all that in. But really it's just a matter of getting this plugged back in and then working all that back in. So I'll show you once that's done. So one thing I want to add, I'm actually going to make a small change I've decided on where I want to run my USB cable, and it's going to take a little bit of doing. So I want to show you it now instead of doing it after and having it being kind of out of series. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to change my camera angle and show you everything that I'm doing. I'm actually going to run my USB ports, because what I want to be able to do is run either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And so I'm really going to want those USB ports exposed, and I've been trying to decide where I'm going to put them. I've just decided. So my cable's already installed up here in the display. I'm going to change what I've done a little bit to show you how I'm going to rerun the USB cables, because I'm actually going to put them in my ashtray. I'm going to have to modify a little bit. I'm going to have to change some things that you wouldn't normally have to do. If you're just installing the display, you don't care about the USB ports or anything else like that, you're pretty much done. Like I said, all you have to do is plug your head unit back in and work it back into place. Put your air control, all your controls back on, put your vent back in, and you're done. But in this case, I really want to be able to have that functionality as well and have those USB ports exposed, and I've been trying to figure out where's the best place to do it. I think the best place to do it is actually down, coming out of the ashtray. And I'm going to have to modify what I'm doing a little bit. So I want to show you before I do that. So I'm going to loosen the display again so I can get the USB cable back off, because I'm going to run it all back up underneath all of this to get back up to the display, and I'm going to have to do that. And I didn't want it to seem like it was out of order or I did it after the fact. So I'm going to pause again for a moment with that explanation, then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Okay, I want to show what I've done. And one additional quick note. So we've got the two clips here, one, and when you pull those off, be very careful not to drop them. Just pull them off, set them aside. You've got a screw here and a matching screw on the other side here, and you've got the screw here and the screw here. Once you take all those out, this frame will be loose. In my case, since I had the hole already, what I did was, I pulled those so it would be loose and give me a little extra space behind. Then I fed my USB cable through my existing hole and fed it up through the dash, all the way up back behind all that wiring. And as you can see, it's all the way back up here again, ready to go for the display. So let me move some of these pieces a little bit so you can see exactly, because I've got the shifter shroud in the way. So now you can see I've got both of my USB cables right here through that port, or through that hole, excuse me, that I've made, and they can just lay right down here in the tray. Now I could always take the ashtray itself. Now I had a hole that I put in this as well for the aux cable, because it had a little collar on it and it fit in perfectly and it was kind of flush mounted and it was hard to see. I could potentially, put a bigger hole in the ashtray itself, but I don't really care. I think that the cables are going to be just here, will be here just fine. And I can also put the adapter here as well. There'll be enough space for the adapter, and I can close the door and it looks nice, and you don't see it unless I want to see it. So that's all installed and nice and seamlessly, so I can get to it and show the additional functionality, like I said, of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and the like, if you want to use that sort of adapter, if you have that kind of phone, and you can use it. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall the display with the same directions that I used before. I'll fit the 2 tabs in the back underneath this top surface piece. It'll slide in, the display will come down, it'll connect to the 2 holes right here, or sit behind these 2 holes, and the screws will go in once you get all these cables back in. So I'm going to get that done, and I'm going to show the last stages of getting the head unit in, and you're almost done. Okay, so the hardest point is done. So the head unit's back in. I haven't put both screws back in yet, but I slowly fed the head unit in with my hand underneath, was making sure all of that wiring harness and bundle that's back behind was pulled down out of the way, because the head unit has to go all the way back in with that post on the back into the back of the frame right here in the back. So I slowly worked it in. Don't over force it. I mean, don't smash it into place, because again, you're dealing with all of those connections and all of those wires. You don't want to break something, you don't want to pull something apart, and slowly fed it back in place. You can see that it's sitting in straight because it's nice and flush. It's flush with the screws, so we put these 2 in. Here's our top data feed cable that goes up to the display. I'll tuck that back into place because I'd pulled it up and was kind of laying up here to make sure to have it up and out of the way, because what it wants to do is come straight up behind the wiring harness back to the display, and you'll run into it with the head unit. So and there's a lot of extra cable there, so I pulled it up and loose and had a big empty open loop right here, so it was up and out of the way, and tucked down on the left side of the head unit. Now I can tuck that back into place in between the vent and the frame, now that the head unit's back in place. You've got your 2 smaller round head type screws to put in here for the stereo, so you can just secure that back into place. But really, before you go too much further, because everything else after this is just small pieces and putting the trim and the buttons back in, that there's no reason why you can't test right now. So I'm going to put the head unit screws back in to make sure that it doesn't move on me, and it's all in place like that, and then you can actually test. So I'm going to finish putting it all back together, then I'm going to show you the last test, and I'm going to walk through for a future video. I'm going to show you the walkthrough of the functionality and how the system works. My main focus here is how to get it installed and make sure it's installed successfully. So the head unit's in. Now all we need to do is put the trim back in, make sure that your vent cable is still up here, your lock and hazard button wire hasn't been trapped behind and hasn't been trapped in anything else. Excuse me, I've done that before, so you can avoid that in this case. Don't make the mistakes I make. This piece just gently slides back in, just rock it back into place. You can hear there's a little bit of a pop as it goes back into place. Then you can take your 2 remaining screws. You should have only 2 left at this point. Top one goes in right here. Put that one in like so. So that trim is in. That trim piece is in this side. Like I said, and all the screws are pretty much the same with the exception of the 2 small ones that are holding your stereo in. So now that's in, and now all this trim is in place, and that's good to go. And then you take your vent, and now again, my button is out, so I'm going to set my button right here where I can get to it in a second. Take this, you take your vent control cable, you put the wire through this little harness, or little clip. The green clip goes back on the post on top, and then take the red plug and just plug the red plug in right there. Take your windows and hazard button wire, feed it up through the vent piece. Here's your button in, and it only goes in one way. So take that, put that in, and then gently walk the button back into place. Now we're going to get hazards and we're going to get fun stuff here as I push buttons, but hey, it's working. Button's in place, and then rock your vents right back into place, right there. So as you can see, everything's in, and man, that display looks great. It looks so much better than that little storage compartment. So I'm going to take the camera down. I'm going to grab my keys, and we're going to turn everything back on. We're going to show some of the sound and basic functions, and I'm going to reserve a detailed walkthrough for another day. But let's show that next. I'm going to go get my keys. So I've turned off my work light because it's LED and super bright and washes everything out. So I wanted to make sure that you get a good view of what this looks like when it starts. Also, I've got quite a bit of light behind me right at the moment, and with me blacking out the windshield so you make sure you can see what I'm doing. There's what you're seeing in the big white on the screen is light from outside my garage. All right, so let's start the car up. Run my windows up so it'll be a little bit quieter for you. So you can see the start of the display. All right, so it's up to the UI. Stereo's working. So let's go for some radio. Hopefully something worth listening to. All right, so then the display, I'm going to do my best to get the best angle I can here. You can tell it's a touch screen. So for example, if I want to play music straight out of the display, I select music. Now music is playing here. What I'm going to want to do, and I'm going to scroll down slowly. So you hit the mode, and now your stereo will say AUX. And we have some Carpenters. So when you want sound from your display side, you're going to have to go to AUX on your stereo. I think that is pretty reasonable. Like I said, everything is touchscreen and working. Navigation, Bluetooth. You can have a browser, you can have internet access, you can have everything you can imagine as you go through this. And then also, it being an Android system, you can install apps as well. So all in all, this install is super simple. It's good to go and makes a huge difference. So this is an AUX E83 X3, and suddenly we've got a display installed into it. And I have an F32 435, and I've installed the Avin product, this same screen into the Avin product, or from the Avin product into my F32. So suddenly an AUX E83 X3 looks about as modern on the inside as my 10-year newer F32. Makes a huge difference. Gives you a bunch of additional functionality, gives you a lot of really neat things to work with and play with. Adds functionality to your car that's better than the OEM at the time, significantly better than the OEM at the time, and works really, really well. In a future video, I'll be doing a walkthrough of the functionality. It's pretty straightforward though, but like I said, my goal today was to do the install. And at this point, you've tested everything, everything's working, you're done, you're good to go. All right, back in after a test drive, making sure that everything works and everything sounds perfectly. I will show a configuration video another time in the future to walk through some of the functionality that you want to do and how the things you want to have set up in your display. But there's a few basic things as far as like equalizing out the volumes between your radio and the display. You get to that in the settings and the rest and get used to working with it. But what a fantastic upgrade, and it looks so much better. I really can't stress the difference that it makes in your car, and how it really brings a modern element and the design of the display itself, because it fits in so well with the BMW design. And I've seen similar displays from Avin in different models of car that even putting it into an X3 that never even dreamt of having a display like this, it really suits it. Not only do you get all that added functionality from the Android side and the Play Store and wireless and video and streaming and navigation and all of those additional things you get, it looks great too. So I cannot be more excited about this. I'm really grateful to my partner AvinUSA. What a fantastic company to work with. I've worked with them for years now, and I strongly recommend them, not only in the products they provide, but working with them directly. I've spoken with that company hundreds of times now over the last few years, and I am truly impressed. What a great company to work with, and I cannot stress it more strongly. If you liked what you've seen, please click subscribe below. I answer all the questions that I get, or as many as I can, and I'll be happy to help you if you have any questions about your installation. Again, super simple, one tool, a screwdriver, and about 25 minutes of time, and your install is good to go. The links for the product are included below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.